Wednesday, June 24th. This is SamCentre. Thank you so much for being here with me. I am your host, Sam, as always, and you know how it is. I appreciate every single one of you taking the time out of your busy day, out of your busy week to be with me on this beautiful, glorious CFL Wednesday. I have these standings right here to my left, and we're going to break down the week 4 action that is to come. There's multiple games that are going to be exciting, and there's multiple reasons to tune in. And then what I'm thinking here is let's do a power ranking. Let's see 1 through 9, who's the best, who's the worst, and who's in between. Spoiler alert. I'm just kidding. We also have some breaking news that we'll get into, and then we're going to end the show with a channel announcement. I want to talk to you. I want to hear from you all about some of my future plans and if it's something you'd be interested in. Enough of all of that. Let's run the intro. Alright, let's start this CFL Wednesday off first and foremost with breaking news around the sports world. The NHL, the Edmonton Oilers have hired Mike Babcock to be the next coach of their franchise, a move that's certainly going to be met with quite a bit of controversy, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Apparently, the coaching staff and the players are very, very confident that Mike Babcock is the right guy. They brought him in to speak with multiple different guys in the organization, whether that was players, whether that was team personnel, whether that was front office staff, and they concluded that this is the right man for the job to take them where they want to go. Connor McDavid is not interested in wasting more of his career not winning in Edmonton. Obviously, he's been very close, but getting that ultimate goal is all anyone's ever going to remember you for. And so, allegedly, he met with Mike Babcock along with his teammates Leon Draisaitl and Zach Hyman, and they really broke it down with Mike Babcock what it was going to look like if he became the next head coach. He told them, hey, you're going to be coached in this way. This is how we're going to run things. And if you don't like that, I recommend not bringing me in. So the Oilers obviously decided they like that and they want him to come in and they want to be coached in that way. So let's see, this is kind of a last stand for the Oilers. If this doesn't work out, I cannot imagine a world where Connor McDavid wants to keep investing in a franchise that continues to make dumb decisions. And on the surface, this seems like another one. Mike Babcock was out of professional coaching after having extreme amounts of success. The man is a Stanley Cup champion, and he's a 2-time Olympic gold medalist as a coach with Team Canada. And so that pedigree and that level of success means that in theory, you should be able to get a coaching job anywhere in the world. And that's what happened after Toronto. He went to Columbus. It was easy for him. But his reputation started to degrade very, very rapidly. Stories came out about how he treated his players with not a lot of respect, how he treated Mitch Marner and the Toronto Maple Leafs like they were absolute kids, and they didn't play well under him, and he was out of there very quickly. And obviously, it becomes a he said, she said. I'm sure there's actual documented things. But after a full league investigation, this is the decision the Edmonton Oilers have come to. So, as a fan of the team, as a fan of Edmonton sports teams, I can say I'm hesitant to agree with this move, but you have to now see the results, because the worst part about professional sports is that winning truly does solve everything. As much as it's horrible to admit, someone like Deshaun Watson in the NFL got the largest guaranteed money in history, and he's a horrible, horrible person, right? So you look around, and oftentimes the reputation for somebody is a lot worse when he won't win. You look at guys in the NBA, you look at guys like John Jones, the champion of the world. Oftentimes people will regard themselves and say he's one of the greatest MMA fighters ever, with tons and tons of personal background that makes him a horrible person that you should never root for. But when you win, when you put on high-level performances, sports fans just forget, and that's the reality of things. Like it or not, baby. So, Oilers, your goal, go out there, win. People will forget about it very quickly. If you go out there and you do not win, the heat will be on you immediately. Connor McDavid will be asking out, and he's probably going to the Florida Panthers because we talked about their big moves. There might be more to come. Moving on with our breaking news section, massive trade in the NBA right before draft day. Today, as I'm recording this, June 23rd, Tuesday, was day 1 of the NBA draft. And you felt like there was a big move coming surrounding Giannis Antetokounmpo the number one star on the market, one of the best players available in the league. Someone that I saw play live in person in the NBA play-in tournament, or the NBA in-season tournament game that they have. Incredible player. When you see him on the floor, how he's so tall and big compared to everybody else, but able to move at a speed that looks like he's a guard, or at least, a small forward, it's incredible. And so you can see clearly why the Miami Heat were willing to give up the package they did. Giannis and Bobby Portis were traded to the Miami Heat in exchange for multiple players, the star being Tyler Hero. Obviously, he's a very good scorer, a guy who will go out there and get you buckets and can go head to head with your team's best defender and still score. But Tyler Hero, Giannis Antetokounmpo, there's a massive, massive difference in the caliber of player that we're talking. So in order to sweeten the deal, Miami had to give up a big, big portion of their future. They gave up the number 13 overall pick in today's draft that just happened. Then they gave up multiple future first round picks and future pick swaps. So this leaves Miami with only one available first round pick to be traded within the next 7 years, and a roster fairly depleted of talent outside of your starting five. What we'll say, though, is oftentimes in the NBA or in professional sports, the narrative is the team or the organization that gets the best player won the trade. If that's the case, then the Miami Heat clearly won this trade. However, we could really see if there's any concerns with Giannis's health, because he hasn't had a clean bill of health throughout his whole career, and he's only now getting older. You have Bam and Giannis combining for 65% of your salary cap, and you have to build a roster. To Miami's credit, that 65% is going to build potentially the best defensive front court in the league. I mean, it's going to be very tough for anybody to score over them. And when you look at some of the teams that you need to beat, Oklahoma City just went out and grabbed the best center in the draft, I think personally. You have Wemby out there in San Antonio. You have Jokic over there in Denver. And so you have a lot of these guys who you need big bodies to defend them. So in theory, Miami's now extremely set up to match up well against those teams. But the East is a little different. You have, if we're looking at the best teams now, New York, obviously Miami is going to be in that conversation. Atlanta potentially, along with Boston, right? And a lot of those teams aren't necessarily heavy on the big men. They're kind of guard heavy and they rely on different scorers. Giannis will match up quite well with a Jason Tatum and do that sort of thing against Boston. But if they go to play Cleveland, that team's fairly guard heavy. Obviously they do have their big men, but they rely on a Mitchell to score a lot of their points. You look at what the Knicks just did with Jalen Brunson, talking an undersized guard who went out there and carried them over 45 points in the championship game, the clinching game for the series, winning the finals MVP. So, Miami, it's not a slam dunk just yet that you're going to make it out of the East, but I think you put yourself in that top four conversation without a doubt. And for Milwaukee, you did the best you really could with what you were presented with. I think it was becoming obvious Giannis was probably wanting out. I'm sure those conversations were had behind the scenes to maximize your draft capital coming back to get future first round picks down the line. We're talking 2030, 2031. These are going to be massive for them because you have no idea what Miami's going to look like in a few years once Giannis is 33, 34. So I ultimately do think this is a win-win for both teams. Milwaukee, you got your championship out of it. You had to do your best to maximize your window, and you did. And this is a good return coming back. And Miami, Pat Riley, and the Miami Heat finally get their superstar, and let's see what they can do with it now. Final section of breaking news that we're going to just touch on, but let's talk about it more in our CFL section. We have a trade in the CFL. We have Drew Brown being traded from the Ottawa Red Blacks and being sent back home to Winnipeg to play for the Blue Bombers, at least as a backup for now. And I've been saying it. Jake Maier sucks. What is Ottawa doing? Let's talk about it as we go down. Ottawa decided to then sign McLeod Bethel Thompson, who was a previous Edmonton Elk, Montreal Alouette, played for multiple franchises across the league. I'm not super impressed. That was our breaking news section. Let's now run CFL Wednesday. Alright guys, CFL Wednesday. You know the drill by now. I love this league. I am so passionate about creating content around it, and we're going to save a couple really cool announcements for the end of the show. But here's how the CFL Wednesday show is going to go. We're going to talk week 4 CFL. 4 really exciting games happening, and then we are going to do a power ranking section afterwards. I prepared a graphic. We're going to talk about my reasoning for placing teams where they're at. But remember, it's early on, and I want you guys to comment and tell me how wrong, how right I am. We're going to start with our Thursday night game. My Edmonton Elks are heading to Winnipeg, down to the hostile environment there at Princess Auto Stadium, and they're going to take on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And I think this is a very exciting game, and honestly a massive game for both teams. Edmonton, you need to keep that momentum rolling. You've proven yourself now against a team in Ottawa who is cheeks, and a team in Montreal who is very good. So it's a mixed bag of results, but you're 2-0. This is the best results you could possibly have asked for. Winnipeg at 1-1, dropping their most recent game to the Hamilton Ticats. I think this is going to be key for them to really decide what their season's going to look like. If they drop a game at home to a team like Edmonton, coming on a short week where Winnipeg is off of a bye, there's going to be questions that are going to be asked. Edmonton would be 3-0, and absolutely that would be massive for the team. Edmonton is really coming into a stretch now of games that I think is key for their schedule. They play Thursday in Winnipeg, and then the following week they head to Kelowna to play the BC Lions, and then their turnaround is extremely short. In that same week, later on the Thursday, they'll play at home in Edmonton. And so now we're looking at a stretch of 3 games in about 14 days, just over, where Edmonton needs to win them. Realistically, if you start to get run down, if something starts to happen and you're 2-3, the season looks a lot less impressive than if you're 4-1. 3-2 is probably the worst case scenario you would look for in this stretch of games, but it's really going to stress the character of the team. We're going to see what they're made of. I believe in the double E. I think they can go into Winnipeg and make this game extremely competitive. But Winnipeg, I talked about it in the breakdown. This is a team in Edmonton that I think they match up extremely well against. I think the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are built to play in games against a team like the Edmonton Elks. I think that defensive game where they can help control the pace, the game will be close for most of the game, so they can rely on Brady Oliveira. They can control field position. They can rely on that crowd, which will be another sellout, in Winnipeg. The Rum Hut will be bumping again. And that's going to be a hostile environment for the Elks to go into. Are they extremely prepared, well coached, and more than prepared in the skills department to match up? Yes. And Winnipeg, we don't fully know who they are yet. We haven't seen enough of them. We haven't seen enough of Edmonton yet either. So a massive litmus test Thursday night in Winnipeg, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Official SamCentre prediction is going to be the Edmonton Elks because I will never pick against my team. However, as I said, Winnipeg matches up extremely well. Brady Oliveira, Zach Collaros, and that coaching staff, all super experienced. They know how to play at home. They're going to have a bad taste in their mouth after their last game, coming off of a bye. If there's any spot to see Winnipeg bounce back in, it is Thursday night against Edmonton. Official SamCentre prediction is the Edmonton Elks to win the game. However, this is a very likely spot to see Winnipeg show what they're made of and have put on a very impressive performance on Thursday night. Moving on to Friday. Another game which on the surface might feel like a blowout, but we don't really know quite yet. Toronto and Saskatchewan. We need to rant about this. Saskatchewan is the away team in this game. However, it's being hosted at Mosaic Stadium, which just so happens to be the home stadium of the Saskatchewan Roughriders. So they're playing the Toronto Argonauts, and the league, in all of their wisdom, decided, Toronto, you can't be in your stadium, and that sucks, Now let's think about it. We got some other stadiums across Canada, and you're playing the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Ottawa, can't really go there. We can't really go to Hamilton's not playing, Ottawa's not playing at home. You know what? Let's go to Regina against the Riders. Who signed off on this? How did Toronto sign off? What happened? Like, how did you sign away? This is a home game for Toronto on paper in Regina against the Riders. Anyways, I won't belittle the point any further. You get what I'm saying. Toronto's going to get crapped on. Like, this is going to be terrible. This is going to be a home game for the Riders. And if the game was over out east, it probably wouldn't be. However, it's also going to be another game where we see a lot of revenue. I'm assuming Toronto gets that home revenue split. And so, hey, I won't say anything. I think that probably factored into this decision. It's going to be a sellout. The place is going to be bumping. We're going to see Chad Kelly coming off quite a mixed bag, but honestly an impressive 2 games so far where he's slinging the rock all around the field, multiple 400-yard passing games, 4+ touchdowns, along with 4 interceptions last game, and he is going to move the ball. So Saskatchewan has come in there in their 2 games, and they've had flashes of looking impressive, but it really hasn't been the dominance that we saw out of them last year. You know, there were times last year it was going to be clear. They'd go into Calgary, they'd go into some of these places, they were going to beat them quite clearly. Through 2 games, though, they've played both their games extremely tight. So if Toronto comes out there and makes this a dogfight early by putting up points in their home stadium, then we're going to see what Saskatchewan's really made of. I lean the Riders in an away game in Regina. I don't even know how this works, but it's going to be super fun to watch a neutral site game. Moving on to a true neutral site game. This one makes a lot of sense to me. The BC Lions are playing their first Kelowna Series game against the Calgary Stampeders, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturday, June 27th. This is a game for both teams. You can see right here to my left the standings. Must-win territory. We're talking you do not want to be now the only team in the West that doesn't have a win. Because obviously, someone's O has to go, and not in the undefeated way, in the opposite. We're talking about 2 teams with no wins through 2 games. BC, a team with quite lofty expectations going into the season. They have a quarterback in Nathan Rourke, who I just looked, is still the favorite to win the MVP of the year. So if you're talking about this sort of stuff, everybody thinks quite highly of the BC Lions. They just signed some more depth wide receivers, which I do think will help. Nathan Rourke is obviously a guy who is not going to be down long, but you have to start winning games because it's very possible that Edmonton and Saskatchewan, Winnipeg, these teams above you start to stack to win games. And if you go 0-3, if you go 1-2, 1-3 in these next couple games, it's not going to be great. I would say there's no massive panic in BC just yet because their next couple games are quite winnable, if we're being honest. It's a game against Calgary and Kelowna, and then they take on my Edmonton Elks next Saturday in Kelowna as well. So now they can come and say, hey, now we're 2-2. You could potentially, Edmonton could be 2-2. Winnipeg could be around that 2-win mark as well. See what happens with Saskatchewan. So you might not be out of it. But this is a key stretch for BC. We say the season doesn't begin till after Labor Day, but I don't think that's true. I think you start to fall behind early and you could be in trouble. And as for the Calgary Stampeders, honestly, I love Vernon Adams. But the rest of the roster, I'm not entirely sold on now. I think they have talent in certain positions, but I'm not sure it's quite enough. I think they have a good coach and they have a well-run organization and they'll be competitive in a lot of games, but I think they're going to lose when it matters. And I think they're probably going to be the bottom feeders of the West. This is a big game. They could make me eat my words by coming out here and putting on a super impressive performance in Kelowna against the BC Lions. I'm really excited for this Kelowna series. We're going to talk about it a little bit later in the show, but I'll be attending the game that Edmonton is playing in BC. Someone who's been to Kelowna in the Apple Bowl before. I think it's going to be really fun. It's going to be interesting to see what the crowd looks like because obviously it's in BC. Lions home game. This is a true neutral site, but home game for BC. But there's a lot of Albertans who can easily make the trip over to BC, myself included. Kelowna has a lot of people from Calgary and Edmonton who have already settled there. So I think it will be a great time. Super excited to see the league expand to different sites, to do things a little bit differently. And we're adjusting with the World Cup. Canada's in action today as you're watching the video. Hopefully they won. Final game of the day. Ottawa Red Blacks visiting the Montreal Alouettes in Montreal. So we're good. No neutral site here. Another place, another home atmosphere on Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. It should be an exciting game. And after what I've seen out of Ottawa, we have breaking news. We talked about it in the first section. The Ottawa Redblacks traded their backup quarterback, Drew Brown, back to Winnipeg. And obviously, Drew Brown began his CFL career in Winnipeg, put up flashes of being a very good player. And then he went to Ottawa and he performed extremely well at times. He wasn't left with a ton of great options or great coaching staffs or all of these things. And you felt this was maybe the year they could invest in Drew Brown. And instead, you've seen Ottawa now cut two kind of talented QBs. They got rid of Max Dunnigan, who they cut, and now they got rid of Drew Brown by sending him over to Winnipeg. And really, for a first-round pick and a second-round pick, okay, great, you got some draft capital back. But why did we make this move? Are we that sold on Jake Maier being your starting quarterback? What has he shown you? Drew Brown has shown you he can be a winning quarterback in this league and lead a team to the playoffs, and Jake Maier hasn't shown that. He showed in Calgary last year, and he showed you through 2 games in Ottawa exactly what I've said, that he doesn't have the processing speed to be, certainly not to be your franchise-level quarterback that leads you to the Grey Cup, not against those elite defenses. It's clear to everybody involved. And so what Ottawa did was they came out and they signed McLeod, Bethel, Thompson, a move which he's a fine veteran quarterback. He's fine. But he's not a needle mover at all, right? Like, he's not a guy who's going to bring you that championship. If Jake goes down, McLeod, Bethel, Thompson can step in there and be fine. But he's not going to be that guy, that comes out there and says, hey, get on my shoulders, guys. Let's go out there. Let's win games. Let's win this Grey Cup. So what are we doing in Ottawa? Are we hoping that this next year we can get a quarterback, land somebody as talented as Drew Brown was? But you had Drew Brown. For Winnipeg, I also don't really know what's going on. They didn't have a quarterback room filled with 4 really talented QBs. The writing's on the wall for Zach Pilaris. I think this is his last year as a starter in Winnipeg. And then you see it. They have 3 guys right now, realistically, who would be competing for the starting spot. I really did think they already had their incumbent QB sitting on the bench, but now you have even more competition. It'll be interesting to see the roster move. I selfishly was hoping that if the Edmonton Elks needed a backup quarterback, it was going to be Drew Brown. He ended up in Winnipeg, back home, back where his career started. But their game against the Montreal Alouettes, going to be a slaughter. I don't even need to break this one down. I think Montreal is an extremely good team. They could be the best team we have in the league. Power rankings to come next. But Montreal at home, coming off a loss against Edmonton, Davis Alexander is going to be fired right up. He's going to be moving the ball around. Ottawa does not have the firepower to compete. They didn't have the firepower to compete with Toronto. They didn't have the firepower to compete with Edmonton. They will not have the firepower to compete on the road against the Montreal team. Coming off of a loss, Davis Alexander's first career CFL loss, he's not going to lose 2 in a row, not to Ottawa. So that were our week 4 matchups, 4 games, 4 reasons to tune in. I am super excited to break them all down for us all again on Victory Monday. Let's get into our power rankings section of the show. All right, guys, let's end the show with our CFL Power Rankings. Let's have a little bit of fun with this one. It's only week 4, but I think it's finally time we start to see who these teams really are. We can talk about it a little bit, starting with the number 1 team on the board, the defending champions Saskatchewan Roughriders. Now, there might be a little bit of controversy to this, but there shouldn't be. The Saskatchewan Roughriders are undefeated, and they are the defending Grey Cup champions. Clear-cut argument to be the number 1 team in the league. Until you can beat the champs, you are not the champs. So Saskatchewan so far has shown in their 2 games that there's maybe some chinks in the armor, but they haven't lost. And until they do, you really cannot question things because games are going to be close in the CFL. All these teams are good. It's professional football, right? So for Saskatchewan, congratulations. First edition of the CFL SamCentre Power Rankings. You are the first team. Until proven otherwise, you demand the respect of the entire league. But the number 2 team is an extremely well-coached team with a very good quarterback in the Montreal Alouettes. A team that has only ever lost 1 time in the regular season with Davis Alexander at the helm, and that just so happened to be the last week in Edmonton as we broke down on Monday. But Montreal is going to be right back there in contention for the Grey Cup. As long as Davis Alexander's healthy, as long as everything stays well, and moving in Montreal. They have a good home atmosphere. They have a coach who really does know what he's doing, a creative offense, and a guy who you're never out of a game if Davis Alexander is leading you in the fourth quarter. You could be down 10 in an absolute monsoon in Edmonton, and it doesn't matter because if Davis is leading you, he's going to put the ball in the right spot, allow your playmakers to make plays. They're really deep at all the important skill positions. They're good on defense. They don't beat themselves. Montreal is going to be in contention for seeds 1 to 3 in our power rankings every week this year, I'm sure. And moving down the list, Hamilton, you made her. Number 3, and I think it's extremely well deserved. Bo Levi Mitchell is slinging the rock this year. He would be my pick as the very, very early MVP forerunner because this guy is just having himself a year. Hamilton might be ready to take that step that the fans have been waiting for quite a while now. You know, it didn't really seem like they were ready. It felt like there was a lot of years where Hamilton was going to blow it when it matters, and I'm not sure I get that vibe with this team this year. Bo Levi feels really locked in. He has good command of that offense. They are loaded at the skills positions. You know, it's between them and maybe Montreal for the best wide receiver core in the league, and I don't even know if it's really close. I think it's probably Hamilton above everybody. And you look at a guy in Bo Levi who can move the ball around to everybody. He can find his playmakers. He can hit this 55 plus passing yard touchdowns. Like, it's going to be incredible to watch all season. If that defense can hold up, if that run game can be established, Hamilton is going to be in the top 4 of this power rankings until the end of the season. And then the team coming in at number 4, maybe it's controversial. Let me know in the comments. The double E, the Edmonton Elks, they are going to take our number 4 spot. The only other undefeated team in the league also deserves some respect. They went out there in the opener against Ottawa, beat them. Ottawa might be terrible, but they went out there and proved it again against Montreal. They showed that their first game wasn't a fluke. Their first 2-0 start since 2019. This is a massive opportunity for the franchise to cement themselves as a respectable team in the power rankings that you have to come into Edmonton and really expect to play a difficult game every time that you do. We have Winnipeg at 5, and again, things could change after this next week. If Winnipeg goes out there and beats Edmonton, it's going to be clear we'll have to switch the teams, right? But at this point, I'm going to lean Elks. They have Justin Rankin, who is an absolute superstar, in my opinion, the best single running back in the league. They have a guy in Cody Fajardo who is not interested in beating himself out there. He's not interested in making the mistakes. And so he's going to move the ball. He's going to be efficient on offense. They have a defensive and special teams minded coach in Mark Killam. Big stars on the defensive line in Malik Carney, guys in the secondary like Ford. I think the Edmonton Elks are set up to be a team that gives a lot of teams trouble, be up there in the middle, top high part of the pack, and hopefully challenging for those top couple seeds as we move on the season. But a lot of things could change going into our Thursday game where Edmonton and Winnipeg take on each other. Right now, we lean Edmonton, but Winnipeg takes our number 5 spot. Winnipeg, a team that relies on their ground game, relies on their coaching, on their defense. They have a good home field advantage over there in Winnipeg. They're going to expect to sell out every single home game. They're going to expect to be competitive. And I really do think maybe they're a little weak at quarterback and some of the other skilled positions compared to the teams above them on this list. But that's not going to stop Winnipeg because they're very, very deep compared to everybody else in the league. I would say they're probably the deepest team at multiple skills position, especially at quarterback now. They have 3 guys who can definitely start in the CFL at this moment. They're well coached. They have a good home field in Winnipeg where they have the fans constantly wanting to be there to make noise, to affect the opposing offenses. So that's going to get you some wins in the CFL. And it could get you a win against an Edmonton team. And if that happens, we're going to probably flip them. Right now, Winnipeg Blue Bombers, you are our number 5 seed in our power rankings. And number 6, what a fall from grace. But a wounded lion is still a lion. That is a quote from my favorite combat sports artist of all time, Charles du Bronx Oliveira. A wounded lion is still a lion. So what you say is this: the BC Lions, you have to show us what you're made out of. Right now, we have you drop to the number 6 seed specifically because you haven't won a game and you haven't looked all that impressive in your opportunities to win a game. So until you do that, until Nathan Rourke goes out and shows us why he is the MVP of the league, why he's one of the best options at quarterback that we have in our game today. BC is going to remain below these other teams who have shown us they can win. I do think there's some winnable games for the Lions coming up. I do think getting some more wide receivers in there, getting some guys back healthy, allowing the defense to gel a little bit together, they're probably going to be just fine, and I'm sure they'll move up the board. As preseason, I probably would have had them at number 3, to be honest, right? And I think a lot of people had them up there as well. BC, you are number 6. Toronto Argonauts. I really wrestled with this one. I had between them and Calgary, but what I go with this. Toronto has a win, even though it is against Ottawa, and it was an impressive, dominant win, where Calgary doesn't have a win yet. They went out there and they were competitive in their games, but they haven't won. And now they're in tough against BC again. Whoever wins between these teams these next weeks, we're going to see it move around. But Toronto is there at 7 simply because I believe a little bit more in their offense, in their QB, and I think their new coaching staff over there is going to take a little bit of time to gel, but I really do believe in them. So I like Chad Kelly as a performer on the field, maybe not so much with his off-season or his off-field antics. I like somewhat of that offense over there at Toronto. I believe they're a tough matchup for a lot of teams. Calgary is going to fill our number 8 spot. It's very much a toss-up between them and the Argos. Calgary not winning a game yet so far, having not a ton of things to be excited about outside of Vernon Adams and maybe that offense. Maybe they prove me wrong and they go out there and they put on a show against the Lions in Kelowna. Calgary, I think maybe this is an opportunity for you to look at the roster and retool in a lot of different ways. They obviously had the top pick in the draft just recently, so a lot of things can change very quickly in the CFL, and it can still change this season. Vernon Adams Jr., he can go out there, he can win you games. And a loss against the champs last week in overtime, that's really nothing to be ashamed of, right? Last place, though, this might be something to be ashamed of. I don't think Ottawa's good. I think Ottawa wins 2 games this year. And maybe. And that's only if they eventually switch their quarterback. But again, now I don't know who they switch to. I think they clearly have the worst QB in the league. I think they are the weakest at skill positions. They have already health concerns with their running back and some other guys. They have a stadium under construction, so we're not talking a great home environment for them. There's not a lot to be excited about in Ottawa at the moment. However, they have a coach with a good pedigree of winning in this league. Hopefully, you want to trust them that they'll right the ship. Maybe it's a bit of a retooling year for them. Ottawa, you are coming in at number 9 on our list, and it's quite clear to me that you are deserving of that number 9 spot. But things can change. It's just week 4, first edition of our CFL Power Rankings. Let me know in the comments where I was wrong. Let's close out the show with our big announcement. All right, guys, let's wrap up the show. If you have stuck around to this part, you are someone who I very, very much value. You're a true fan of the channel, so you will be interested to know what the big channel announcement is. What's happening, SamCentre? What's going on? And it's simple. We are going on the road, baby. I want to start to show everybody what I'm capable of as a content producer. I love this league, and I love the idea of making some different ways to showcase our beautiful game, our beautiful country, and the fans around that are rabid. So what I'm going to do is simple. Starting in July, the first week of July, I'm going to be heading down to Calgary to watch the Stampede Bowl. The Calgary Stampeders are going to be taking on the Toronto Argonauts right before the beginning of Stampede on Thursday night, July 2nd. I'm going to be there live. I'm going to interview fans. I'm going to take on the game, give you some shots of the game, give you my post-game analysis in the stands. I'm super, super excited about it. If you are in Calgary, please come say hi. Get on the interview. Get on the channel, baby. It's SamCentre. We are building a community, and that is leading into our next step of the journey. From Calgary, I will be heading my way over to Kelowna to watch the Edmonton Elks take on the BC Lions in Game 2 of their Kelowna Series game. That will be July 4th. Come say hello. I want to talk to you all. I'm going to be in the party zone again. I've already requested sideline permission from the league, from the CFL. We'll see if that comes through. I can't promise anything, but what I can promise is this. I want to showcase you guys. I want to showcase the fans, our league, our game. I want to make something that we can all be proud of. We can all look at and say, This is why we love the CFL. This is why we love the fans. I'm going to speak to the people. I'm going to record segments of the game, and I'm going to show you my journey along the way in our beautiful country of Canada, Western Canada specifically, Kelowna, Calgary, and everything in between. If you are excited and if you're interested in tuning along, hit the like, hit the subscribe button. SamCentre out, baby.
Yo, I'm sat on the throne, but I'm looking at the blueprints. Building a temple where the spirit leaves its footprints. Gibeon nights, the most high asked what I'm needing. Didn't ask for peas or for enemies to be bleeding. I asked for the wisdom, the hokmah, the insight to distinguish the dark from the frequency of light. See, I built the first house, cedar, wood and gold plate between Jeshurun and Boaz. Standing at the gate, the pillars of the world, severity and mercy. The path is narrow, man, the road is getting thirsty, but the temple laid stone, that's the trick for the blind. The real masonry is the structure of the mind. Seal of the king, two triangles entwined. The lower reflecting the upper design. Master of the spirits, I made the demons work. Building up the temple where the shadows used to lurk. It's the wisdom of Solomon, the heavyweight crown. Building up the spirit while the system falling down. Building up the spirit. Yeah, they say I had the ring, the brass and the iron, commanding the glacier, the wolf and the lion. See, the demons are just facets of the ego and the greed. I harness the shadows to plant the holy seed. You gotta kill the beast, you gotta make it move the blocks. Put the vices in the furnace, turning keys inside the lock. 72 spirits, yeah, I kept them in the vessel. Every conscious man has a demon he must wrestle. If you don't control the lower, then the lower controls you. That's how the temple falls and the spirit gets through. I saw the vanity, they're chasing all the wind, but the wisdom is the treasure underneath the skin. I sat with the queen, yeah, Sheba brought the riddle, trying to find a set and not the sides or the middle. She saw the cupbearer, the order of the table. Realize that history is more than just a fable. It's the key of Solomon, the magic in the math, finding your geometry on the righteous path. From the quarry to the corner, I'm the stone they rejected. To the master workman saw the spirit was perfected. Modern day Solomon, I'm building in the ends, turning all the haters and the demons into friends. The temple is complete when the heart is in tune. From the rising of the sun to the setting of the moon. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity unless you know the